Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'm the Gnarly Gnome. This is Cincy Brewcast. It's the voice of Cincy Craft. Every time I think that we couldn't come up with some kind of weirder idea for Cincy Brewcast as far as where or how to record a show, we come up with something. And not that this is that strange, but for this show, it definitely is for me. We are not in a tap room. There's actually very little craft beer here at all, if any.
Arguably none.
Arguably none. We are at the Happy Hollow Inn. Is the name actually technically Happy Hollow Inn, like number 2 or something like that? Do you know? I think I'm pretty sure there's some kind of number thrown in there too. It's a very, very strange little bar in the middle of Norwood. It used to be even more fun because it was kind of tucked off the beaten path, and there was nothing else around here. There was an abandoned factory down the street. Now that's this fun little hipster enclave in the middle of Norwood, and this just kind of sits on its own in a parking lot outside of some industrial parks, and it never changes.
And it's this beautiful old Victorian home.
It's
kind of it reminds me so much of the house in Fight Club.
Yes. That is a good description for a lot of different reasons.
I might go down to the basement later. Who knows?
And I'm joined. I think the episode title for this episode is Brewskies with Brew Skies on the Brewcast, because it's a fun little alliteration. Because I'm with both the folks from Brew Skies Happy Hour, Brett Coleman Baker and Michael D. Morgan, or as Truth Beer Podsequence calls you. Do you know what they call you?
No. I try to avoid.
Michael brings the D, Morgan. Welcome back to the show, guys, and thank you for giving me the little push to make it here, because this is going to be fun. Welcome back, guys.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us on the show. We're excited to be here.
Brett, for anybody who doesn't know, is one of only, I think, 2 people who has been on every single season of the Brewcast. So when we saw that we were getting close to the end of the season, I said, oh shit, we got to figure this out really fast to get you on the show, because we can't break that streak. We're going to talk about a lot of different things. We're going to talk about dive bars. We're going to talk about craft beer and what is craft and what is not, and when does it matter and when does it not. We're going to talk about your show. We're going to talk about this mysterious book we've heard so much about and supposedly is coming at some point. We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff, but let's start off with everybody's favorite segment, and this is going to be a good one this time.
From the beer fridge.
From the beer fridge. What are we drinking? We'll start with you, Brett. What in the hell are you drinking?
Montreal's own Labatt Blue.
Is that a normal dive bar pick for you, or is that just what looked like it needed to be drank up there when you walked in?
It was more spur of the moment decision.
Okay.
It's usually something a little bit more along the lines of PBR, Hams,
sure,
High Life, whatever. But
yeah.
I mean, how often do you see Labatt Blue in Cincinnati?
I don't know. How often am I looking? I don't. It could be everywhere, and I just wouldn't notice.
This is a fine
It's a lot bigger up in northern Ohio. Like when I lived in Toledo, I drank the shit out of Labatt's.
Get a little closer to the border.
It starts leaking over from Canada.
And we're not a hockey town either. Not yet, at least.
The Airborne movie from the 90s wants me to think very differently. This is definitely a hockey town. Love that movie. Mike, what are you drinking? You went with my usual dive bar pick.
Yeah, the fanciest of beers, the champagne of beers. Good old High Life.
Yeah, if you say that in the wrong country, though, they will dump all your beer and kick you out.
Right.
I went with at least something local. We went with Hootie Delight. I got a quick little impromptu tour last week of the new Sinbev brewery, and am now just all in on what they're doing here in Cincinnati. I'm absolutely in love with it. When you're listening to this, Bachfest just happened, but when we're recording this, we're getting ready to head into Bachfest weekend, and Sinbev is always a big part of that. They're always kind of central to a lot of the Bachfest happenings, and this year there's a lot of the tours are going through that facility. So hopefully a lot of people walk out of the weekend feeling the same kind of love for Cincinnati cheap macro beer.
They are doing wonderful things, and this city is so ripe for a good, cheap regional
Oh,
macro
man.
brand. Like, how do we not have one?
I mean, it gets
Bigger.
close every once in a while. I think Garage Beer was doing was doing close.
14K was set up to do that.
Yeah,
Right time, right
Burger.
place.
that
yes.
rebirth of
Hootie,
Burger.
the re-release of Burger. That was like a liquid stream, but it was good. I don't know what the hell else Burger was in America, but it was good. It was a solid beer. 14K was a solid beer. Yeah, Hootie Delight. You know, when it that was quite a while. That was the mid-aughts that Hootie Delight came out the first time, I think.
Right.
So we should have had one several times.
Well, and Garage Beer is doing incredible things right now. But if you go and you look, like if you go down the street and grab yourself a Garage Beer on tap at wherever it's on tap around here, if you look closely, it's not brewed in Covington, Kentucky. It's brewed in Columbus, Ohio. And they're not talking about where they're making that, but it's think about the big breweries in Columbus. It's fucking Brewdog, and like it's just like that. Nobody's like it's just you take this, and I have a lot of respect for what Garage Beer is doing right now and how much they're growing. But man, you take this idea, this like local brand that can finally start to be the thing, and just take it and just send it to the worst place on the planet you could possibly take to make that shit. It's
Can
frustrating.
we agree that Columbus is one of the worst places on the planet?
I was speaking more of Brewdog specifically, but Columbus is all right. There's a couple good fun spots up there to hang out. It's just
I'd rather live in a couple other big cities in
Sure.
Ohio than Columbus.
sure.
You know, I don't understand the decision behind the Garage Beer stuff in the first place. I get what the new owner's doing because they don't care the fact it was local to us. That's not their goal, right? They want to take it big.
Do you know what the name of their company is?
The Garage Beer?
Mm-hmm. Jock Beer.
Oh,
Yeah,
Jesus
that was
God.
so if you go get yourself a can of Garage Beer that was brewed in Columbus, on the side of it says brewed for Jock Beer.
Columbus is
That was
the perfect
there.
place to make it.
I assume it's Jock, J-O-C-K, not
Yeah.
J-A-C-Q-E.
No, yeah.
It's not Jock Beer?
No, but it's Jock. It's beer ass beer.
If it was doing as well as it was doing and on the explosive growth path that it was, I don't understand what Braxton was doing in the first place. That's the only thing that doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I mean, and this is just my opinion and my thoughts. I have no kind of inside knowledge to this, but if you need an influx of cash to do something, that's the only thing that makes
You
sense.
spin off your most successful brand.
You
in
take
order
a
to
brand
get
and you
cash.
sell it off to get some cash to do the things
Well,
you want to
that
do.
makes way more sense now that you said it out loud.
It's the only thing that I can think of, the only thing that makes sense to me. But again, that's my opinion and my thoughts. It's not obviously Braxton's, and they're more than welcome to send me grumpy emails, tell me to keep my mouth shut.
If this High Life is brewed at the Trenton facility, which is just north of
Should be.
Cincinnati, is that not local then?
Yeah, it's
Right.
local. That's a locally produced beer. They are a local brewery, and as is the Hootie. I guess you're the only one not drinking local. although
Imports are hot right now.
Labatt's is are they Budweiser owned?
Oh, I don't know.
They might be made in Columbus. Who knows?
Well, Kid Rock told me it's cool to drink
It's
Budweiser
okay now.
again. So.
It's okay now. I heard a little clip of him on Rogan talking about it, and his thing was like, I never really cared. It was just a joke. I never cared the whole time. I didn't care what people were drinking. I'm like, right.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
if you're gonna be an asshole, at least have some kind of conviction behind being an asshole. Let's talk about craft beer. Let's start there. Let's talk about. I mean, this is a good kind of kickoff to the conversation. What is it? Is local what matters? Is quality what matters? Is independence what matters? Like what makes craft beer anymore? And does any of it even matter?
You know, part of me wants to say none of it really matters anymore, but that's kind of what Big Beer wanted in the first place, right? Wasn't it the whole PSYOP
Right.
goal 20 years ago? So it makes me wonder
Not
if...
even 20 years ago, right? Like well before that, it was.
yeah, shit, I bet back in the 90s,
90s.
almost with the attack on...
Red Hook purchase
Yeah.
starts there.
attacking Sam Adams and all that
Yeah.
good stuff. It makes me think that maybe we're due up and ready for micro beer to make a comeback as a
Ooh,
term.
I like that microbrews. Let's go grab some microbrews. But are people over it? Do people care?
Man. Yes? Yes.
You sound unsure.
I don't know. I think that's a very open question, and I'll say that the more that Brett and I have done this podcast, I think that the independence and the size is really important. I think that there are two things that define craft, and that is small scale and quality. So when you see these large buyouts, that
Can
really
you,
is.
Can you define small scale versus large?
Well, I thought you were going to say define quality, because that's a
that
whole
might be
other
next.
thing.
Well,
too.
yeah. I mean, I'd actually like to get there, because that's one of the things that I'm seeing problematic where you're small scale. I mean, Craft Brewers Association has that definition that small is under 6 million barrels a year, so that they can call Sam Adams craft beer. That's
Yuengling.
bullshit.
Yuengling too. They're big in Sam Adams, right?
I believe so.
They are right now. Yeah, they've surpassed them.
I think Yuengling's the biggest craft brewer.
But I mean, I don't know where you stick actual numbers on things, but I think along that large regional basis, Rheingeist is at what? Like probably 120,000, something like that.
This year or last year, I think.
So, I think somewhere around 150,000 barrels, that's where you're kind of capping out at still having. I don't or more. It was.
I can walk into some smaller places, and I can walk in and I'd be like, this is not craft anymore. What you've done here is the exact opposite of what I want craft beer to be. But then I walk into like Sierra Nevada down in Nashville is always the easy example. You walk in there and you're like, oh yeah, this is still craft beer. Like they get it. Like this is big. But this feels right. It feels like what you want from a craft brewery. So like you have this massive craft brewery, and even sometimes a very small one that just doesn't feel right. And I can't figure out if
it's a
feeling.
you know it when you see it type thing. Because how do you define that? To me, it's like, are you taking shortcuts in an effort to be the best capitalist, or are you doing things to make the best beer? What decisions are you making? Sierra Nevada using whole leaf hops still to this day would have been very easy for them to switch to pellets, and probably no one would ever even notice a difference.
Right.
But they stick with the whole leaf, so that's a big deal. But there's plenty of breweries making less than 5,000 barrels of beer that are buying flavorings and extracts and cheating these beers and making things that they know is going to sell well. But is that actually quality? Is there
Sierra Nevada is still independent?
Yeah,
So
helps.
I think that's small scale. What does that mean? That's harder to define. But independent and dedicated to quality, that's probably.
Are we craftsmen or are we line cooks? Are you just throwing shit together? Are you working at Chipotle, which is all the sheen of quality, or are you actually, an independent place doing a thing and focused on quality?
Well, there's a whole other side to it too, which I think we probably talked about on something, because as I'm saying it, I feel like I've talked to you guys about this before. But like there is like a side, like the desire to innovate and to try new techniques and to create things differently. Part of that is craft, and that's craftsmanship. And so sometimes that means like, hey, can we figure out a way to make this beer cheaper? Like that, part of that is craft. Like part of that is the craft of making beer, of trying to figure out, are we doing this the best way possible? Is there a better way to do this? Is there a smarter way to do this? And so like that starts to get confusing too. It's how far can you push that before your McDonald's just churning out hamburgers, and is that still craft? Nobody could look at it and be like, yeah, this is a craft hamburger. But what they've done for the hamburger industry, like that's incredible stuff to come up with some of the science and things that they have. Like you can't take that away from them either. And how, like, it's all very confusing.
But industrialization for profit is different from craft for the love of a thing.
So is it something that you really can't like just look at somebody and be like, yeah, you're craft or you're not? Like, do you really have to like dive into a company and be like, all right, who are you guys? Why are you doing this? What is your motivation behind this?
One of the intent as a means of, are you craft or not? Interesting. I don't know how you.
Somebody described it to me one time, like when we were talking about like what is craft, which is a horrible conversation, but and they said, well, it's just the intent of things, like why are you doing this, like giving a damn, like if you're doing something because you care about this thing, then that's craft, and if you just don't really care, then it's not craft anymore, and it's like that. What you put into it is what makes it craft,
and you see that in part. I've had a lot of complaints about the front of the house people in some tap rooms lately.
Sure.
And you see it reflected, like the beer also tends to not be that good. But I've been to several breweries lately that have glass cleaners. There's things that I prefer to call beer bidets. But you got a glass cleaner behind the bar at a brewery, and you have bartending staff who refuse to use the glass cleaner.
Barely turns on.
Or don't even use it. I mean, it's right there, and they don't use it. And they pour you a beer in a detergent dirty glass with no head, and they can't tell you a damn thing about the beer. You're in a brewery. You're not making your own simple syrup. You have one fucking job. That's to serve beer and understand beer. And if you're not doing that right, then it's really not your fault as a bartender. It's the fault of that establishment. And if that establishment doesn't care,
it's still
that
your fault as a bartender.
Well, yeah, but I mean, but if you can get by with it because your employer, the brewer, doesn't sufficiently care that their staff knows anything about beer, can explain their beers, appreciates their beers, it's problematic.
So that brings a good point. That okay, if it's craft in your mind, you're the creator, you're making this product, and to you it's craft. You're doing everything the right way, whatever that means, and you're putting the romantic ideal of craft into your product. But if that message isn't getting conveyed to the consumer, does that even make it? Is it still craft? If a tree falls in the forest, or blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So is it still craft? So what you're saying is like the message is not getting to you at that tap room. So in a way, you're saying that invalidates its ability to be craft. So not only do you have to be a craftsman, but you almost have to be a storyteller.
Yeah,
I think if you love what you're doing and you're passionate about that liquid, and I so hate people that say passionate about anything, but yeah.
I hate people with passion. They're the worst. They like things.
I hate people with feelings.
They care. Stop caring. Enough. But if you
it's a t-shirt.
if you really care about what you're doing, you really care about the beer, I think that it's going to be conveyed at every step of the way.
That's you hope so. But I've been to some really incredible breweries where you walk in and everybody that's there and everybody that's serving the beer and everybody that's making the beer make you feel like you want to die inside and you just don't want to be there anymore. And on the flip side, I've been to places that make terrible beer that I absolutely love. Like I want to keep going back because I love the people and I love the experience and I love who they are. Is it two different sides of the craft coin? Maybe like it's a weird spectrum of craftedness. I don't know. There are places that that I like going and there's places that I don't like going, and I don't know that their craft score. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's
we need a craft score.
A good kind of segue into where we're at here. I have a section on my website. Go to thegnarlygnome.com and /bars. Probably there's a whole section about bars where I write about bars, and every one of those that I write about gets a dive score because I don't think there's a such thing as a dive bar. I think that there's a spectrum of your diviness. Like there are some things that make a place more dive bar than another one, and there are different factors that kind of play into that, some kind of weird algorithm. And maybe it's the same for craft. Maybe there's certain things that make me feel that you're more craft than others.
I like this. I like that a lot.
Craft score.
It's impossible to have to
and it can shift
through
and
that.
It can shift and change, and
businesses grow and they shrink and they change and they lose money and they make money. And is Treehouse still craft because they own a golf course? If you own a private
that
golf
definitely
course,
hurts
is that still?
that hurts their craft score.
Yeah,
Yes, but it's awesome. But yeah, like it definitely changes the score. If it's a day where you're having goat yoga in your tap room, your craft score is dropped. Like it's noticeably lower than it was the day before. Charcuterie making classes, yeah, that's also going to drop your score just a little bit. But
I don't know that either. The golf course does. I don't know the other two things drops your
Goat yoga
craft
works at a
score.
wild brewery.
Goat
If
yoga.
you got goat yoga and goaty beers, then we're good.
Yeah.
it definitely hurts your craft score to me.
It may increase your douchebaggery score, but I don't think it hurts your
Now
craft
I need to
score.
see. I need to see
I'm wearing
Mike.
a Lululemon coat right
I need
now.
to
I feel
see-
really seen.
I need to see Mike at yoga, like in a downward dog with his goat just hanging out on the back of his head. It's gonna be my new Facebook profile picture.
If I'd hung around Bachfest longer, perhaps it probably would have happened by accident. I might have just woken up that way one day.
There's a shocking lack of goat yoga at Bachfest. Nobody does yoga at Bachfest. That's too much. Let's talk about bars. Since I mentioned the word dive bar, for you guys, like what makes a place a dive bar? Is there other kind of categories that a place can fit into versus neighborhood bars versus dive bars? How does that kind of shake out for you guys? Everybody loves to throw around the word dive bar.
I
Yeah,
think
that's true.
that,
It's the trendy thing.
Dive bar, number one, you can't have created it in the past 10 years. A dive bar has to be a bar like this place.
That's the faux dive,
That's-
like Jerry's Jug House,
Right.
which is a great place.
Which
The
was
new
a
Jerry's Jug House.
real dive bar before
Yes.
it became a faux dive bar.
It's still a wonderful place to go, but not a true dive.
Right. And so price has to do with part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think tradition and if that point of sale beer mirror has been on the wall for at least 25 years.
If all the branding is out of date and
Yes.
it's still on the wall,
Yeah. Yeah. If there is ads for beer companies that haven't existed, if there's like a good Schlitz ad.
Yeah, ideally, all of the ads on the walls should be from places that don't exist anymore.
Right.
They ran
Yeah.
out of space 30 years ago.
Yeah. So there's history. Your clientele needs to have history. You got to have regular clientele. And, they have to have been coming there. You have to have your core people that have been coming there for a long time.
I think a big part of that, it's got to be around for a long time. Also is indicative of you can't really have a dive bar if they don't own the property. There is no dive bar that exists that's renting because
Right.
it's just impossible.
Right.
And I also think a key to a good and true dive bar versus neighborhood bar or versus bar that you just wander into that has cheap drinks. The first time you go there, do you feel a little uncomfortable when you first walk in? If you don't feel uncomfortable when you park and you're walking up and feel even more uncomfortable when you go from the bright outside to the dark inside and you see everyone look at you, then it's not a dive bar. You have to have uncomfort to start.
For a very brief moment, but that has to go away real fast
It instantly
too.
fades.
Well, to be a good dive bar, it can stay. It can stay, but that's a bad dive bar. A good dive bar is that it goes away. Like you find, the people might give you a little shit look, or they'll give you vetting questions. Where are you from, whatever. And I think that even like the first vetting question with a dive bar is you're being judged on what you order when you walk into it.
Yeah.
So if you walk into a dive bar and you ask for a fucking Pinot Grigio, you're not going to be received well,
And what are you doing when you first walk in too? Are you like
You
walking
assess
the
the
whole
scene.
place and scouting it and then like sitting down and not going right to the bar? If you're going straight to the bar and you know what you're going to order and they're going to have it, you can't just order it.
You got to show authority.
I'd even say you can't go there and order an obscure craft beer. You got to go in and just know.
No. There are so many bars that I frequent that it took me like 3 visits before I figured out that they had beer that I really wanted to drink.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh shit,
done
this
the
whole
same.
time I've been like there's definitely a handful that I can think of off the top of my head that I have to remind myself when I walk in and sit down. Like, remember, they have good beer. You should order, a can of something that is not.
That's another good point about dive bars though too, is once you establish yourself as a regular or semi-regular, you can actually kind of start to make it your own a little bit. You
Sure.
can be like, hey, Sherry behind the bar, could you make sure you start always stocking Sierra Nevada Pale Ale for me?
Yeah.
Like, I'll drink them. I'll drink it over a course. I'll drink a case over the course of a month. You just bring them in. They can do stuff like that,
Right.
which that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
You go to a place that's corporate owned, and they're ain't going to do shit that you want to do.
That is, I've never really thought about that, but that is a very good point. That if you become, and that's the key, you have to be regular at a place. Which I'm not a regular anywhere. I'm a regular everywhere and a regular nowhere at the same time. Like I've been everywhere and I go everywhere, but I don't go everywhere frequently enough to really call myself a regular.
I used to be a legit regular at least a half a dozen bars, maybe a dozen at some point in the early aughts.
That's a sign of a true degenerate. If you have more than one home bar.
No, he supports local
through the
businesses.
city. Yeah.
He's not a degenerate. He is a hipster.
No, I'm more the degenerate.
If you are going dive bar hunting too, having cash on hand is important.
Oh, it used to be that you could not open up a tab and pay with a credit card here for a long time, and I don't know when that changed, but I have a pocket full of cash because I was not anticipating when I walked in. She's like, "Oh, can I take your? You want to start a tab? Can I take your card?" I'm like, I don't know, can you? Is that a thing? I've always paid cash. It's funny. Have cash ready. Know your drink.
What about small talk? What's your preference on if you go by yourself, you pony up to the bar?
I don't always like small talk. Part of what I like about bars is kind of just people watching at a lot of places and just kind of sitting back and kind of watching all of the things that are happening at that bar, depending on kind of when I'm there and the bar itself, I guess.
I wind up in that conversation multiple times with odd results to me, because to me, sitting at a bar,
that's for conversation.
That's a
open invitation.
Yeah, I mean that's a participation sport.
Yeah,
you're in the fucking game, man. You sit down at a bar, you're in the game.
Yeah,
this is the dive bar Olympics. You're gonna small talk me whether you want to or not.
If you're sitting down at a bar, you need to be ready to have a conversation. Like that is like you're accepting the social contract when you sit down,
right?
Which is very important. Like you're not going to gain acceptance if you just sit on your phone, especially if someone tries to engage you and you're just like, and then go back to your phone. You're done at that dive bar, especially if it's your first time.
Do you think that craft beer culture is part of what has ruined some of this stuff, or is it something else, but kind of this Applebee'sification of the world?
No, it's kids in tap rooms that's really ruined it.
Well, that was part of a very interesting conversation earlier about that man, kids in alcoholic establishments in general have definitely changed a lot of the culture of all of this, which again, maybe that was Applebee's that kind of really started that thing and made it acceptable. I blame Applebee's for a lot in our culture.
The original Fern Bar, the Applebee's. You're right.
Yeah.
TGI Fridays used to be cool. You know, it used to be a place that you wanted to go. They were making cocktails that weren't getting made in this country, and they had like cocktail competitions, and they were cutting edge. And then
it was also like those early Fridays locations. The bar was still very kind of separate from the restaurant, and then it started to become the center of everything. And
that's a good point.
And Applebee's kind of picked up on that and kind of carried it. But
I'd blame other stuff. I would number one blame technology, combination of cheap, big LED television screens.
Oh, TV screens are generally
fuck
a bad
up
thing.
the whole like communal aspect of a bar. Number one,
I disagree 100% with that. I don't think TVs in a bar are bad. I think TVs have the ability to create conversation versus.
I've never.
Stop it.
You're not the first person to tell me that. I have not witnessed it once in life.
Maybe it's not on that. When I got here today, for instance, all of these TVs were on like the game show network, and they're playing game shows, and everybody's sitting around playing game shows with the TVs and having a big conversation about the game that's on.
Okay, there's a point to that, I guess. Like it depends on what's on. If it is people blathering about sports with the sound off.
That I can't.
Or
I
even
cannot
just,
stand walking in, and I don't know what that show is that's on ESPN that is always on during the day. but it's on in every single bar.
The Pat McAfee show.
Yeah,
It's awful.
Oh, I hate it.
Why is it on at bars?
It's everywhere.
There's nothing to see.
Everywhere.
And if the volume's turned off, there's nothing to listen
Everywhere.
to.
It's a problem.
TVs are one to me. Two, just because they came first, these stupid phones, that has killed human interaction across the board. And then you've got the multiple things that are leading to extraordinary real estate prices everywhere. Because as Brett said, for you to be a real dive bar these days, you have to own it.
Right.
Because you can't afford to be a old school bar and rent anymore. And even real estate prices, hell, if you live in Hamilton County and you got your tax bill this last month, well, there might be a good chance you're closing down in the near future just based on the goddamn taxes.
Right.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to make any kind of living with the level of debt that small businesses are leveraged on this day and age. And I'm not talking just necessarily interest payments, which is gonna choke you, but every business is running off of debt, so everything is artificially higher than it needs to be. And speaking from experience, it's just tough. It makes everything more difficult when you have just piles of debt that needs to be serviced every single month. Really hurts cash flows.
We're gonna, when we come out of all of this, which at some point will come out of what we're in the middle of right now, whatever we call that. Dive bars were supposed to always be the thing that kind of is always left, and the new kind of trendy whatever spots that come and go will shift and change and evolve, and at the core of it all was always these neighborhood bars that are just always there, and we're seeing more and more of them kind of go away and become this thing that doesn't exist anymore. And
they're an endangered species, that's for sure.
There's still a lot of great ones around, but fewer and fewer every year. So get out there and support your neighborhood bars. I think that's the thing that I want to leave people with. Go out there, and even if it's that place that you drive past every day and it looks a little creepy and you're not really sure what you're walking into, try it and just walk in there one day, bring a $20 bill and walk in. You might be pleasantly surprised. I've never walked into, and I've been to a lot of neighborhood bars. I've never walked into a place that I walked out and like, man, I should never go back in there. That was terrifying. There's been some places that there was a really good story that I came out with, but I never walked out thinking, man, that was a bad decision that I just made walking in there by myself.
There is really few of those places. It's just it might look shady from the outside and crusty and whatever else, but once you meet the people inside and you see it, everyone's just trying to get by just like you are. It's really not. It's really nothing to be worried about.
I've been in a few biker bars that were like that.
Maybe, but even and maybe that's a bigger thing too. That there's fewer and fewer biker bars now than there used to be. I think that a lot of that has gone away because it's bad for business. You really don't get the crowd if you're a biker bar that you would if you just kind of maybe were friendly to bikers but didn't hang your entire personality on it.
My dream retirement plan is to open up my own dive bar.
Oh, me too.
And there's going to be no posted hours. I'm just going to open when I feel like it, and I'll close when I feel like it. And there will be no TVs. I'll have 6 beers on draft, and they'll never change. And I'm just generally going to be inhospitable to most people that come in. And it's just going to be great.
Is that true, though? The beers would never change at all?
That's my plan. 6 beers on tap. That's it.
I think it's funnier if you have like 3 beers on tap, and then they just every season they change. Like somebody comes in the winter and you're like, hey, I really want a Pilsner. That's tough shit. It's wintertime, man. We're drinking stouts now. That's all we got. I got 3 stouts. That's the way it is.
Listen, you're wrong for wanting a Pilsner right now. You're drinking a stout.
That's what I want to drink.
Get the fuck out.
Here's the right beer for you.
That's funny. I think that's a lot of people's dream is to own a bar when they retire. That's also why there's a lot of terrible bars that open up because it's everybody's dream when they retire is to open a bar.
That's why there's a lot of shitty breweries right now
and shitty restaurants.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Restaurants. I think there's way more shitty restaurants than there are shitty breweries. Personally, maybe not. Well, that's a good question. Like per per capita? Are there, is there more percentage wise shitty restaurants or breweries?
Well, if you think about it like this, there's 10,000 breweries in the U.S.
Yeah.
Half of them are below average. Just by the law of averages. Half of them are pretty shitty.
I was going to try to argue that. I'm like, well, no, technically half of them have to be below average. But isn't that true with everything?
There aren't that many. I was in one in, I think, Bloomington, Indiana. I mean, I admittedly have a predilection to dislike anything about Indiana, but this brewery was so bad that I wanted the bartender was a very nice middle-aged woman, and I almost punched her in the face just because the beer was that bad.
Easy, P. Diddy.
That part of it's not true, but the beer part of it is. I mean, it was. I was actually very nice to her, and I tried to say,
Excuse me, miss.
pleasant things.
Your beer makes me want to punch you in the face.
She's like, "What do you think of the beer?" She's very enthusiastic, and I'm like, "Well, sure."
It's very
I love
wet.
a Budweiser.
It's very wet.
I think lots of things about this.
Is it depressing, like when you look at the state of craft beer, when you walk into a place like that and you realize that there are God knows how many people that are walking in there every day that absolutely love it. This is their spot. This is the best beer ever. You have to come here and try Bob's Brewery, and
Yeah, there
wherever.
were people at the bar at this brewery, and it was like a middle of the afternoon on a weekend or something. But yeah, I mean, there was a guy down there, and she's like, whatever, Bob, whatever the hell his name is, oh, he really loves our brown or something. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll drink what Bob likes, and it had that very a beautiful, effervescent aroma and taste of dirty dish rag. Little finish of
Please go
definitely infected.
Ah, yes.
And, I'm like, oh, yeah, good call, Bob.
This tastes handmade. But is that depressing? Or
Yes.
because
they're turning people off on everybody that walks into that brewery in this smallish town in Indiana. And I don't know that Bloomington was actually the right town. I get them confused in Indiana. But, everybody that walks in there and tastes one of those, they're thinking, oh, well, that's what this fancy ass beer tastes like, right? And it's turning people off on, I mean, it was enough to make me switch to Budweiser at that place. But for a lot of consumers, it's probably a lot to turn them off for,
That's is it? Are we still at that point as craft beer drinkers in this country that people walk in and that will turn them off to craft beer? That was always
wondering that too.
That was always the fear. If somebody walks into a brewery and they try a craft beer and it's bad, they think that's craft beer and they turn their nose up and they're never coming back, not just to that brewery, but to any craft brewery. And I don't think that that's the case anymore. I think people walk in and be like, man, this was just not good craft beer.
It's definitely less true. I mean, it's not like it was in the 80s or 90s.
It's still the
You're
case
both
for some
absolutely
people,
correct.
though. It's
Right.
got to be, right? I mean,
Yes.
think of just the first time you tried tequila, if you have Jose Cuervo or El Toro or something, you're just like, tequila's terrible. I'm not drinking this again. And then it's years before you have a good one. And then you're like, oh, shit, it can actually taste good.
I mean, I
think
teach
that
students.
exists too.
Yeah,
I teach students every semester that have never had a beer that isn't a light beer. So particularly the younger you get, you're correct that it's not the same as it was in the 80s or the 90s or the early 2000s even. But yeah, on an individual basis, you're still going to judge, oh, well, I tried a brown ale once and I hated that. That's disgusting.
Right. I can't figure out for me if it's depressing seeing those places that are around that are making terrible beer, or if it's almost like this sign of this that craft beer is so big that we can have like this whole spectrum of what it means, and all of that can be valid. I can't quite put my finger on that. Like I think that there is as much of a spot for there to be like not great craft breweries as there are great ones. Like everybody can't be great. Like there is always going to be the worst craft brewery in the country. I'm curious to who that is. That's actually now really fascinating. There's got to be the worst, who's the worst brewery in the country.
Let me figure out the name of that one in Indiana. I would like to nominate
but
it.
like somebody has to be the worst, and like that spectrum, I think, is important too to kind of show this range of what beer is. I don't know.
We should do a road trip
Just
for
the
this podcast.
the
We should
worst
go to
breweries
that.
in the country.
We should go to that one in Indiana in particular.
No,
we all do flights. It's going to be fantastic.
The joke would be you have to take a road trip and you have to go to the worst brewery in every city, you know, along the trip, but you can't go anywhere else. Like you're not allowed to like go to the crappy brewery and then like, man, that was fun. Now let's go grab a beer. No, you're done. Like you're going to bed and the next day we're getting up and you're going to.
If you really want to catch a buzz, you're doing it here, or you ain't doing it.
You're staying right here on this bar stool and you're having a hell of a time. Because I think I still could. Like that's the whole joke about all of this is that like I can go to a mediocre or probably even bad brewery and have a great time. Like maybe that says more about me as a drinker than it does anything else. But
you can say that about restaurants. We've all been to a lot of mediocre or worse restaurants in our lifetime because that's just a part of it, and you still generally make it work.
Yeah, but like I'm ordering very different things when I walk into a bad restaurant. You know, I'm not ordering. Oh, I'll take the I'll take the sushi. You know, like there's some things that like there's rules, but like with beer, like there's not a lot of room there to wiggle. Like you're drinking beer. I think it's gonna be beer.
But there's a price thing. I mean, inflation is part of that, right? Like it's a lot easier. I will drink bad beer, but if I'm going into a dive bar and I'm drinking watery mass brewed beer, that's different from walking into a place that's serving me a terrible beer and they're charging me $7 or $8 a pint for it.
Yeah.
I have a different attitude about that.
Yeah, maybe. I guess it depends what's around them too. Like if they're down the street from a brewery that's way better than what they are, and they're selling it at the same price, that might change the perspective. But if it's $2 cheaper down here at the shitty brewery, I'm okay with that.
Oh, I got room for that. Yeah. These days, if you're serving me like you got, it's happy hour. You're serving me a $4.50 pint, and it's not that good. I'm cool with that. I'm happy with that.
I like this discounted shit.
There's cost benefit analysis for everything with me.
It is interesting though that like people have these very distinct different opinions about bad when it comes to food, bad when it comes to entertainment, bad when it comes to beer. Like they have very different like lines of like what they'll tolerate. Like I'll eat at McDonald's every day during the week, but you put me in a bad brewery, to hell with you. I'm not doing that. It's like you've been eating at McDonald's every single day this week. Why is beer the thing that pisses you off? Like why is that the bad thing that is suddenly killing some kind of craft in our country? Entertainment. You're sitting here just mindlessly just sucking in episodes of the Kardashians, or that's the only good reality TV show that I know. There's got to be some other good ones. And
I was unaware that was a good one. Sure.
As far as like good examples of trashy reality TV, and people will get upset about something else, but yet you're just mindlessly sucking in this terrible entertainment. And so like, why do people use beer as this litmus test of like I want better?
I don't know. It's weird. It's a really weird thing, and I don't understand. I don't understand what the end goal is here for all of that stuff. Like where are we headed right now as an industry? Because I feel like as more time goes on and things are getting tougher, rather than capitalism doing what capitalism is supposed to be doing, as we were taught, where competition drives innovation, competition drives new things, competition does this and that. Well, this increased competition and shrinking pie really only seems like it's increasing homogenization. And I get less excited about where we're going currently because I know it's going to be so long before we come out the other end.
Do you think we have given it enough time to really see that, though? I mean, craft beer is still extremely young, and just speaking kind of, I'm looking at it with this local lens of what's happened here in Cincinnati, of how fast things have grown. You throw COVID in the middle of that too. There hasn't been time for anything to kind of adjust and figure out what it all looks like yet.
Oh yeah, you're right. We're on the downslope of the trough before we come back.
It hasn't even started like shaking yet, for things to kind of start settling out and kind of developing their own things and people to start really innovating. There's a lot of people that get pissed off if I said innovation hasn't even started yet, but like I don't think so. I don't think we've seen it. I don't think people have really figured out tap rooms yet. I don't think they've understood what it means to operate a tap room and to give it personality and to give it its own identity. Like people are still just scraping the surface.
I think that did happen. I agree with that we're not done, that figuring it out isn't done, but I think that started. And then with COVID and this explosion of breweries, I think that we're at a point that's lower than we were 5 years ago. That doesn't mean it keeps.
What do you mean by a point lower? Like as far as,
I think in terms of saturation has made beer more similar rather than more innovative, and I think that tap rooms, full of children, people are trying to figure a lot of aspects.
Actual children, not like my friends that are
right,
immature.
Right.
Just making sure.
Yeah, all of the. But I mean, I would say
I'd argue that tap rooms that are children positive is a differentiation factor, and I think that's okay.
But it shouldn't be everywhere.
No,
I think that's the thing, that like, they're, for everything you can look at a brewery and be like, yeah, this is a problem with the brewery, and this is something that I want out of a brewery. It has its spot. It doesn't have to be everywhere. Like just because you're opening a spot doesn't mean it has to be family friendly. It doesn't have to have a dartboard. It doesn't have to have TVs.
Right. That can be part of your brand or not. But it doesn't all have to be the same.
If you're opening a tap room, and I'm going to word it that way very carefully. If you're opening a tap room, look around you, and if everybody has something, it means you should not have that thing. And if nobody has something, it means you probably should have that thing. And it seems so stupid that somebody has to say that out loud. But I feel like that's where we're at. Like people look around and like, oh, all these breweries, like look at all these families in here. I should open a family-friendly brewery. This is what everybody wants.
Right.
It's like,
with a bunch of TVs.
Like, what are you doing? Like, how is this like where we're at? But I think that at some point things will start to kind of shift and evolve, and you're going to get these places with these really cool personalities because they figure out that they can find their place within all of this other stuff. And I hope that happens. I hope it happens soon. I don't know that it will, but I hope so.
I'm going to disagree with both of you on this whole idea of, to back up for a second, this whole idea. I mean, like you carve out where are you going to, why is craft beer the thing that you're going to complain about? Well, I go back to price. I don't think it's the thing that you complain about. I mean, if you're charging me $40 for a steak, it better be a really good steak. If you're charging me $1.70 for a hamburger, okay. It's edible and American cheese has its place.
That's a good point.
So to me, there is a price thing. Anytime, if you're charging me $7 or $8 a pint of beer, it better be a really good beer.
I look at it from a completely different perspective. When I walk into a tap room and I sit down at a bar and I order a $7 or an $8 pint, I'm not really ordering a beer. I'm ordering something else. I'm ordering an experience that is very different than I get at Applebee's, or I get even at a bar like this, which is a great bar. Shout out to Happy Halloween. I'm ordering something else. I'm ordering a different experience that you can't get at those places. I want to sit down and I want to talk about beer, and that's why I'm there. Even if that beer that I'm drinking is not as good as I would have gotten somewhere else. Maybe just my perspective, but that's the difference for me, is that like I'm not necessarily just drinking beer.
Circling back to the importance of your front of the house people knowing what they're talking about.
Yeah, I go to tap rooms not necessarily just for the beer. If it's just for the beer, the best bar in the city is in my basement, and I can fill that fridge up with whatever the heck I want, and I can get a great experience. I can have a good conversation because it's just me, and it's the whatever I want or whatever I don't want to be on TV is on there. It's a great bar. Sometimes there are definitely kids in the bar though. That's a problem. But
the more we do at Urban Artifact, and the more we're kind of growing or stagnating or whatever over these past couple of years, which actually we're off to a really good start this year. It's kind of crazy, but I just feel like I just don't know a goddamn thing anymore. I have no idea what's happening. I'm so confused. I'm so excited about everything we're doing and the stuff that we're pursuing and the new innovations or just stepwise improvements. But the greater market, I got no goddamn clue anymore. I feel like I just don't have the finger on the pulse of craft beer like I used to, even 2 years ago or 4 or 5. I don't know. I'm just so confused. And on one hand, I'm just a little, I guess, scared and sad due to not knowing, where it seems so much more clear 5 years ago. It seemed like everything was on the up and up, and now it's just like, what we're talking, like we started the show, like, what is even craft? Like, well, what the fuck? Like before, I feel like that used to be like more joking of like, what is craft? And be like, yeah, fuck the big guys. And now it's like, what is craft internally looking? Like, who are we looking at each other? Not like us versus them. It's now like, who the fuck are all of you guys next to me now?
Well, no, there should be like a whole real conversation about that with everybody on a very regular basis as a brewery. Like when you're sitting down and you look at the products that you're making or have made or thinking about making, and like, what is craft? Who are we? How do we fit into this bigger thing? Why are we doing what we do? Like, those should be actual conversations that I think for a long time for places weren't. They didn't think about it. They didn't, because it didn't matter. You didn't have to do that. And
that's true.
I think it's important to as you're finding your place within this bigger kind of thing that is happening, whatever it is, craft or not, I don't know what we want to call it, but to be able to find your place within that, I think those conversations are extremely important. Personally, I feel like there's exciting conversations happening behind me right now. That's the problem with
those are really good and important things, and any business should be doing. You should constantly be asking yourself who we are, what we are, what's our vision, what's our values, how do we reach that, how do we share that information with the market, and yada yada. But
I'm more fascinated with a brewery as they are hitting that 5 or 6 year kind of point in their life than I am when they first open up. Like it's really easy to on paper you've decided, here's what this brewery that we've decided is, here's our branding and our vision, and here's this story of what it's all about.
We used to make beer.
Yeah. One time you guys made beer. I have an Urban Artifact beer in my fridge right now in my podcast studio, and on Mondays when I do the live show, I now let people vote which beer I'm drinking. They get to pick which row, and then which beer in that row I'm going to drink. And Phrenology is sitting right in the front of one of those, and I keep waiting for somebody to pick it, and they just won't pick that beer yet. And it's a terrible kind of game, because I just pick 3-1, I think is where it's at right now. Does somebody write that down? That means I get to drink it next week. But like, this vision of who you are is more interesting to me later on in your life as a brewery than it is early on. Like it gets hard. It gets confusing. It gets weird because you start looking at lots of other things other than just this happy picture of here's what we envision for
since
for
this
things.
is a Cincinnati-based podcast, I don't have any qualms of talking about this brewery. Braxton, started off very different than where they are now.
Oh, yeah.
Like completely different company. Like their vision when they first opened felt like they were going headlong towards, we are going to push and grow and be basically Rheingeist that's going to sell to Anheuser-Busch.
Yeah.
And now they're just like, fuck it, we're opening a couple tap rooms and that's basically all we're going to do. And it's just crazy to me that to your point of like, yeah, you say these things when you start and then 5 years down, like now where are you?
Yeah, I mean, look at how that has changed. In that meantime too. Like, what did craft beer look like when they opened? What is craft beer today?
I mean, I think I don't run a brewery, and so there's a lot of things that I'm not going to judge until I've walked in those shoes. But
I'll judge it.
There are decisions that I don't get. I mean, Braxton is a fantastic example. I remember, as we were sort of coming out of COVID and things were opening up and it was a little better. Like from my house to Braxton in Covington on a pleasant day, it's just kind of the perfect walk. It's, I don't know, it's 2.5, 3 miles, something like that.
Oh, that is not the perfect walk.
So by the time you get over there, well, you've earned a few beers, I mean, it feels good to sit and have a few beers, come back and hit the wooden cask on the way back. But I would make that walk and I would get over there and I would look at that board and they've got all these beers and not fucking one of them is drinkable. It's like, oh, do I want the pastry stout or the pastry stout or the 7 seltzers or the 3 New England IPAs? Can I just get a goddamn beer that tastes like a good fucking beer? Can you serve me a fucking stout or a West Coast IPA, even a good Pilsner? Can you just serve me a beer that isn't a bunch of sugar and bullshit? And so how they went from when they started out with like Richard Dubé, they brought in who was a master at doing really traditional classic style beers.
Well, and Evan too, in his own right, coming from Opera House, incredible.
Knew how to do really good traditional German beers, and initially their beers were spectacular. I mean, they were brewing some delicious beers, and somewhere along the way they just fell off a cliff. But I don't know what happens in between.
So I will give them a shout out. They're usually my early week office because one of my clients is right over there in Covington. So I head over to Braxton afterwards, and there's some really, really cool stuff happening there now. They've kind of made this shift almost back to what I think that you probably remember from the beginning. Slow pour Pilsner on tap all the time so I walk in the tap room, get myself a slow pour Pilsner. While I'm waiting for that, I get another lager. You can get a slow pour and a half pour as part of the same little package deal. It's just absolutely
That's
brilliant.
pretty clever.
and they've usually got like 4 different lagers on tap, a couple different traditional German styles. Like there's I believe there is a West Coast on tap right now. Like there's like, I think that they went through this weird kind of thing in the middle that
the vibe era.
When you look back in 50 years after a company has kind of had this whole story, and you can really like place these kind of eras onto things. Like there is going to be a period there where it's like they were trying to figure out who the hell they were, which as a fan of a place sometimes can be frustrating while you're in the middle of it. But if you can kind of hang on to a place, and if they can hang on to who they are at their kind of core, when they finally do come back, it makes it all make sense, and it makes it all kind of fit into this bigger story that you can kind of latch onto as a fan.
Sounds like I need to go back. I haven't been there in a long time. I didn't even realize they made a slow pour.
Their slow pour Pilsner is incredible. It is so
good. Got
good.
the Luker faucet and everything?
Oh, yeah. A special glass, like a really cool slow pour Pilsner glass.
Hell yeah.
But I will walk over there this Saturday and try it again. But if the beer sucks, I'm punching somebody in the face.
You can punch me in. Don't go to the face. We got YouTube to worry about. Punch me in the neck. Just right in the side of the neck.
Like a kangaroo punch.
Yeah. If you guys, here's a fun question. If you're not drinking beer, what are you drinking? Like what is the thing right now? We've heard all these fun stories about how big tequila is getting, and obviously the canned cocktail shit that's out there. What do you guys drink if you're not drinking beer?
Red wine.
Any particular kind of red wine, or it just has to be colored red? Because I feel like that's a very big category.
Red. No, I mean
that's like saying fizzy beer. That's
I
not...
I like a nice full-bodied red, but particularly in winter. I mean, if it's summer, I'll sometimes drink like a nice dry Riesling or a Chardonnay occasionally, or a Pinot Noir. So I'll go on the lighter side of stuff. But if I'm drinking wine, it's more along the Cab, or I really like Spanish and Portuguese reds.
Yeah.
They're really like bold and fruity and jammy, and
Is that
I dig that a lot.
What is it? Tempranillo. What is that Spanish?
Tempranillo is that's Italian, right? That's a region of. I think it's a region of Italy.
I don't know. I was going to say Spanish, but who the hell knows?
It might be Spanish.
Whatever it is.
Mediterranean.
It's either it's either like southern Italy or
big kind of fruity,
northern
jammy.
Spain.
I get
think.
that.
But yeah. Some of the best wines I've had have been Tempranillos, actually.
Yeah, me too.
So I don't know where the fuck that is in the world, obviously, but
this is the problem with wine discussions. Nobody ever knows where anything is or what's actually happening.
I don't know where.
Wine is so hard to talk about.
Gatekeeping is insane. The level of knowledge you have to learn before you can even talk about it is insane. It just sucks.
And they don't make it easy. I mean,
No,
they make it right. They make it intentionally pretentious, and
they make it so you have to have money to really understand what the hell's going on.
Right. And I think that maybe there was a time that worked, but it's not necessarily working anymore.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can break down, you can get really nerdy about a Pilsner, and you can really break it down and talk about the different pieces of a Pilsner, but anybody can sit there and be part of that conversation, be like, oh yeah, I get that. That makes sense. I understand all of those things you're saying. That's not the case with wine. Like, it's just somebody's getting left behind at some point.
Yeah, when you start talking about different hills and shit, like, go to hell. Who cares?
What about the dirt? What do you...
Listen, wine's got a ton of problems. Also, first of all, wine people, they're all liars. The shit that they do as a winemaker that you don't understand, that you're not privy to, is just bonkers. They put all this emphasis on the land. And you know what that's code for? Fucking money. Bourgeoisie motherfuckers owning shit. You know what matters with wine? Not the fucking land. It's not the goddamn land. It's the winemaker. Can you take good grapes and turn them into a good product? It's not because the grapes are grown super well. It's because the winemaker knows what the hell they're doing, and they know how to do it, and they know what different additives and what different processes, what different yeasts to do, and how to work it to make a great wine.
There's not better fruit than other fruit.
There is, but it's mostly bullshit.
But there's better soil, but there's better soil.
Better
the
grain
same
than
thing to
other
some
grain?
extent with hops,
Why
right?
does it matter with hops? Why doesn't it matter with fucking grain? No one gives a shit about those things in beer. No one gives a shit about that with anything
No,
other
but
than
it
drink
does.
besides wine.
I mean,
it has a small
certain
impact, but
hops grow.
It is way overblown with wine. Entirely overblown.
But isn't grain like much more like there's not like this is the 2023 crop of this
Right.
like isn't it kind of all mixed together almost?
Yeah, on
like
purpose.
isn't there more
and
of
you can do that with wine to create homogeneity across everything.
Well, sure.
And you can make it more consistently better every single year. But winemakers are just, bullshit owned by bullshit rich people doing bullshit stuff. And at the end of the day, it's the winemaker that makes it good. You can have the best grapes in the world, and they're still going to come out bad if you know what the fuck you're doing.
Sure.
So why does all the credit go to some stupid ass soil or your dumbass old fucking vines? It's the winemaker that's making it quality.
Winemaker can leave, your soil can't. Like it's always there.
I used to
you have
work
control over, right? Like
I guess.
I used to work at that winery. Actually, it was outside of Manchester, Ohio, the worst fucking winery in the world.
Because it had
It's
a
called
shit
Moyers.
winemaker.
They did. He was an asshole.
That is interesting though, because I know that there are breweries that have suffered over the years where like their head brewer leaves and goes somewhere else, and everybody thinks, "Oh, that's it. You know, it's done. The beer's going to be shit from here on out." It's interesting that wineries have figured out a way to kind of negate some of that. And it's like
it's like huffing their own farts. That's how they figured it out.
Our winemaker doesn't really matter. It's about where we are. So over, how many centuries, we're always going to be incredible because we're still here. It's still in the same spot. Whereas I think some breweries sometimes have to fight that because
it's all bullshit. The amount of additives and stuff they're adding to wine to get the exact profile they want. It's not just take the grapes, press them, and you got good juice and you got good wine. No, it's take the grapes, press them, add sugar, maybe add water, add tannins, maybe add different types of tannins. Do you want tannins from oak? Do you want tannins from grape? Do you want tannins from berries or citrus trees? How do you want your tannins? Because you're going to get some. Or do you need more body? Well, let's add glycerin. Fuck it. Start throwing that shit in there. You don't have to put any of the stuff on the label either. They're all doing it. Are you not getting the flavor that you want out of your sparkling wine? Well, guess what? You can just buy yeast extract called Mana Proteins and toss that shit in there. Whatever you want to do in wine, you can cheat it, and most of them do. So, I like this crap that it's the grapes is bullshit to me because it's the winemaker knowing what's deficient or what's not in the grapes versus what the customer wants and bridging the gap between the two. Your land is bullshit. It always has been. How do you figure out how to make it better? That's the winemaker.
So do you think that because of all of that, do you think that means that wine is ripe to just be wiped off of the current planet of what people are drinking, or more likely that it's going to be the next thing that kind of starts to maybe even
wine's due up for a proletariat revolution.
I think that
ready.
It's ready for something crazy to happen where it becomes the thing.
How can the whole of Europe make consistent $12 bottles of wine that are banging, and in our country we can't have anything that's good at a store for less than $30?
Right,
it's bullshit.
Well, there's stuff cheaper than $30.
Right.
Well, when you go out to eat,
there's no, not at a restaurant. Absolutely not.
You can afford to go out to eat. Whoa!
Can I go completely afield?
Sure.
No.
Are you going to take your pants off? Is that what's about to happen?
Actually, it's not far from that.
It wouldn't be the first time in this bar. I can guarantee it.
This is true.
The one time I got fired, I've had lots and lots of jobs, and I'm not going to say that I left all of them under, the best of terms. But the only time that I ever got fired was from the winery that I worked at, and I was a waiter. I've been a bartender a lot. I was only a waiter once, and I'm not a very good one. And but that's not why I got fired. They would
shocker.
they would change the work schedule midweek. And so I was off on July 4th. So I made, these big plans on July 4th with my girlfriends and my friends my friend's parents had a houseboat. And they were also friends of mine.
Girlfriends, plural. Is that what you?
No, there was just one.
I think that
there was just
plural.
There was just one, and as it turns out, she didn't even like me that much. But I had big plans, and so they changed the shift like a day before July 4th, and they expected me to come in on this Saturday, July 4th, where they were really overstaffed. So I just didn't show up, and that's why I got fired. But it was on the river, and it had this big deck. And so most of their seating was on this deck, overlooking the river, and it was a beautiful view. So we took the houseboat down right in front of the winery, and we all mooned it. Just drunk as hell.
The winery that you worked at.
The winery that I worked at. The winery that I was supposed to be. I was supposed to be working at that moment that I mooned it. And I sent somebody else in for my last check. So,
wait a minute. What is that down on the river? I recognize those pearly white cheeks. That's amazing. I've never been fired in any kind of spectacular fashion, unfortunately. It's always been just slow sadness. Guys, thank you very much. I appreciate you hanging out and drinking a few beers with me at a location that I would have never thought, 9 years ago when we started the Cincy Brewcast, that we'd be doing a show here. But
can we plug our book before we go?
Oh, yes. Does this book actually exist?
Published date is the week of May 6th. The release date will be Missing Link Day.
Awesome.
June 1st.
And I'm sure we will be talking about it much more on this show in the very near future. In fact, it might be the first book that I actually write a review of on my website because that'll be fun. We're excited about it. It's a book about history of beer, right?
Well, it's a little bit different. This is stories from the brewing industry. So we have interviewed the people that have really helped shape the industry, starting with Dave Heinrich from Oldenburg in the 80s, which was where I learned a lot about beer a long time ago. And the people like Scott LaFollette from Blank Slate and Lindsay from, she went through the Goose Island thing and then was also up at Rivertown. So we've got a lot of people from different perspectives. Brian Goulding from
Jim Cook from Boston Beer.
And Jim Cook from Boston Beer. And so it is, there's narrative in between, but we do a lot of it interview style so that it's in people's own words. And it's edited to be readable, but a lot of it, not thanks to us, but to the people that we've interviewed, is funny as hell. And we feel really good about it. It's called Tanked in Cincinnati. And
my wife, who helped us edit our nonsense down into a book, she said, I thought this book was going to be really boring and I was just going to do it because I love you. But I really had a lot of fun with this and laughed out loud. That Scott LaFollette chapter really had me rolling. Your wife, wives aren't going to pull punches. So the fact that she actually said she liked it and it really had fun and thought it was actually a really hilarious book was the best compliment I think we could receive personally. Anyway, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're really excited
for it.
June 1st.
I'm really excited for it. As soon as there's a pre-release copy that you can send me so I can get some reviews written about it, get it my way because we'll
get you a pre-release copy.
We're gonna blow shit up with this book. It's gonna be fun. If people want to listen to you guys, if they like hearing your voices, how do they do that?
Yeah. Check out Brew Skies on YouTube. That's the best way where all our content goes.
Then they have to look at you too.
Well, the podcast is on there and you don't have to look at us. Or wherever you get podcasts. Just search Brew Skies Happy Hour. It's our oral history of craft beer. It's actually us being serious. If you want us just being, dicks, basically, check out the Barstool Perspectives with us, our weekly opinion show based on recent news and happenings.
Booze news, all of the booze.
Yeah.
Yeah, all kinds of whatever is happening in the industry, you guys talk about, and you talk about all of it. There's been some really fun stuff, some really crazy stuff, some good stories that you guys have covered over the last what has it been like?
We've been doing booze news, Barstool for like a year now. Yeah, we're just about a year.
It's been some good stuff. It's a good show. Usually drops around the end of the beginning of the week, and you can kind of start your week with knowing what's up in the industry.
You've been a very valuable guest on it.
Oh, thank you.
Several times.
I'm very proud of some of those episodes. It's been some good stuff. Thank you guys. We'll be back next week. I don't know what we're talking about. We'll probably be just rehashing the chaos of Bachfest is what my guess is. And we'll be sobering up.
If you want me to moon a winery, just let the gnome know.
All right. You know what? Maybe that's the next YouTube video from the Gnarly Gnome, mooning wineries with the gnome. How many local wineries are there? Stay at the ready, Beanaclet. His cheeks are coming. We'll be back. If you guys like this show, if you like any of the stuff that I do, go to thegnarlygnome.com/support, and you can support that way. Since Brewcast, the voice of Sense Craft.